Hey guys, it is Tamara. Thank you so much for coming back to my channel. Welcome back. Today, I'm just going to briefly talk about the physiological effects of intergenerational trauma. I'm not currently in my office today because my grandmother was just released from the hospital. She stayed there for at least 10 days, give or take one. And so I'm with her right now. I'm not in the office. I'm with her, just kind of babysitting, if you will, and trying to make sure that she feels comfortable and she's okay. And then I'm going to shift change with my brother or my mom coming up a little bit later. So I figured that I would just go ahead and do a brief video on the physiological effects of intergenerational trauma right where I am. So thank you so much for coming back to my channel. For those of you who are subscribed and for those who are new, I encourage you to hit the subscribe button so that you can stick around with us and be a part of our growing and developing community. The benefits for you in today's video is I'm going to highlight the physiological effects of intergenerational trauma. So on Monday, we talked about intergenerational trauma, the 8 signs that you are struggling with it. And so I think one of the things that came out of that video was an awareness of what intergenerational trauma is and what it does to you. And I saw a lot of you through your comments to me. I saw a lot of you identifying what intergenerational trauma looks like in your own family and how it has impacted you. I know it has impacted me a ton, and it has impacted my family as well, my extended family, as well as my immediate family, my brothers, my mom. So I think that video was a really therapeutic video because it focused on, what symptoms and behaviors and emotional and psychological ruts impact you. But I think one of the things I need to highlight in this video is that it's not just the trauma itself that impacts you, but it's the physiological responses to the trauma that impacts you as well. So there's a couple of ways that you can be impacted by trauma. One is post-traumatic stress disorder, and that could be acute or chronic, meaning that it lasts for a short period of time, or it's going to last for a longer period of time, right? So chronic is, beyond 6 months, and acute is around 3 to 6 months, okay? So PTSD can be chronic or acute. The other thing that you can end up struggling with is compassion fatigue or burnout, okay? If I can say it right, compassion fatigue or burnout. Compassion fatigue is the idea that you have been so compassionate to people who are suffering for so long that you begin to feel drained and overly weighed down yourself. So an example of this would be intergenerational trauma impacting your mother, for example, and your mom has a severe mental illness as a result of being traumatized by her foster family or her adopted family, and you've had to move in and really take care of her, and so that kind of trauma just disrupts and erupts in your family, disrupts your family and erupts in your family. So that's one. The next one is burnout, okay? And burnout can happen when you've overworked yourself. So it's not the same as compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue, again, is really caring for somebody who's going through a hard time, and you begin to become weighed down and overly burdened and just tired and exhausted. But burnout is different in the sense that, you've kind of overworked yourself so much that you can't go any further. You can't go any further. You've overworked so much. You're just exhausted. So you can experience that. So PTSD, chronic or acute, and then you can experience compassion fatigue and burnout. Okay, so those are the 3 things that you really can struggle with when you are dealing with intergenerational trauma, when you have a lot of factors impacting you negatively. Okay, so let's just go ahead and jump in to the physiological responses of compassion fatigue and how they impact the body. Okay, all right, guys. So one way that can really set you on a bad road is when you are faced with the stress and the physiological and psychological, emotional components of intergenerational trauma. So let's say, for example, you have dealt with post-traumatic stress disorder for years, right? You've had chronic PTSD, you've had flashbacks, you're hypervigilant, you're unable to sleep, you have nightmares every time you go to sleep, you're finding it really, really hard to function on a daily basis, you're really dysfunctional in how you approach life. So let's say that you go to your therapist and you start explaining all of these symptoms to your therapist. Your therapist is going to want to look at two systems. One is the sympathetic nervous system, and the other is the parasympathetic nervous system. Both of those symptoms are attached to what's called the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system. Okay, I'm going to put all that stuff right over here so they can see it. The autonomic nervous system is really in control of our automatic processes. So our breathing, our swallowing, right? Our respiratory system, our pulse and heart rate, right? Things that automatically work on their own, right? They don't need our input as vulnerable humans, right? They do all the work on their own. That is the autonomic nervous system. Also the brainstem, okay? That's an autonomic system or area as well. And the brainstem is right where the spinal cord is. It runs up the back of the neck, okay? So the autonomic nervous system deals with those autonomic processes. Another important component of trauma would be what's called cortisol. And cortisol seeps from the pituitary gland. I'm going to put a picture right up here so that you can see what the pituitary gland looks like. But it's a little pea-sized area in the middle of our brain. And it has a lot to do with the release of cortisol and other essential hormones in the body. So when you are stressed, cortisol gets released. But then it also sets off a chemical reaction that sets off the autonomic nervous system. And the autonomic nervous system turns into two different systems, the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. Those symptoms automatically operate, okay? Now let's talk about the sympathetic nervous system. And I actually did a video on this a couple of videos ago. So I'm going to post that at the top here so that you can go ahead and check that out. But the sympathetic nervous system really has a lot to do with survival. Okay, it's the fight or flight system. It's the system that really responds quickly and swiftly when you are in danger. Okay, it's the system that sends blood to your heart, to the major organs in your body, to your legs, so that you can run and escape danger, right? It's the system that slows down your digestion and your urinary tract, right? So that you're not urinating on yourself, and so that you're not hungry when you need to be escaping or getting away from danger. So the sympathetic nervous system is what I call the gas pedal, because it's like everything in your body speeds up. It starts to react to the trigger or to danger, and the fight or flight mode kicks in. Now, the parasympathetic nervous system is different because it's the brake. Okay, it's the brake system of everything. It slows everything down. So your digestion begins to come back, so you get hungry, you're able to relax and breathe calmly, right? Your thinking ability and your cognitive ability comes back. You're able to function in a calm fashion. You're able to process what's going on with you, right? Blood flow has slowed a little bit. It's not sending blood and oxygen to your major muscles so that you can run and escape. It's slowing down. Your muscles are not constricting or contracting anymore, right? Your pupils are no longer constricting. So everything in your body slows down. That's the brake system, the parasympathetic nervous system. And these two systems have a lot to do with trauma, because post-traumatic stress disorder really takes advantage of these two systems, okay? Primarily the sympathetic nervous system. That's why you're getting flashbacks and you're feeling hypervigilant, or red flags are going off when they shouldn't be, right? There's another component to all of this trauma talk that you need to be aware of as well, and that is the amygdala. I'm going to put a picture right over here for you. The amygdala. The amygdala, it's hard to say. Amygdala, try to say that fast. Amygdala is an almond-sized structure in the brain, okay? And we actually have two sides. We have a left amygdala and a right amygdala. The amygdala is the emotional center, okay, for emotional memories. And what happens is the amygdala stores emotional memories in its system or in the brain. And so that's why when you work at a bakery, or when you walk by a bakery, you might smell something that reminds you of your deceased grandmother. You may smell something that reminds you of somebody that you love, because the amygdala is the very system of the brain that processes emotional memories. Okay, but there's another piece to this amygdala that gets complicated, and that's the emotional responses to stress in your environment, to potential danger in the environment, sometimes the amygdala, all it does is respond, right? It goes off as like a white flag, if you will, or the red flags start going off in the amygdala, sometimes unnecessarily. The amygdala is not very intelligent, it's emotional. And so all it does is, it's kind of like an Alexa device. I told one of my kids this, who has OCD, and she wanted to understand what her brain is doing. And so I told her that the amygdala is like an Alexis device. When it hears you, or something in the environment triggers it, your amygdala goes like the Alexa device, and it's like searching around for anything that's emotional and anything that is chaotic or anything that it needs to be aware of. And if your amygdala determines that the environment is safe and it's like this, guess what it's going to do? Your amygdala is going to slowly calm down and the threat is gone. Okay, that's the best way I can explain it to you, and that's how I explain it to my little kids as well that come to my office. So the amygdala, when you're around danger or things that are triggering to you, when you're around a site where maybe the trauma happened or you were raped, and so you're going on a date, that triggers you, your amygdala goes whoosh, like an Alexis device. It's like, I'm listening, I'm looking, and then when it realizes that there's no danger, it goes right back to being calm again. Okay. That's the best way that I can explain the amygdala to you. But the amygdala is a pretty interesting area of the brain. Again, it's reactionary, it's impulsive, it is not logical. And so that's another system that gets triggered by trauma. And, we can also say certain other areas of the brain gets triggered as well, but that gets a little deep and complicated. I'm going to go ahead and post a video right up here for you so that you can go back and see some of that brain talk I've done before in the past regarding trauma. But I do hope that this video was helpful so you can understand how your body responds to trauma and what's going on in your body every single time you find yourself dealing with trauma. Thank you so much for being with me today, guys. In this video, I encourage you to give it a thumbs up if this was helpful to you, and go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you can stick around with us. I will see you guys on Sunday with another video. We're going to continue for the entire month of April our conversation on intergenerational trauma, and stick around for my live YouTube video coming up in the next couple of weeks in April so that we can meet and talk, and I'll answer questions and I'll talk about intergenerational trauma. So stick around for that. All right, guys, have a wonderful weekend.